Well, welcome, Nate, our Director of Cybersecurity. Yesterday, we did that webinar. We talked all about how threat actors are using AI. Today, we're here to just talk very high level, give us a little summary in case you missed it, or if you want to revisit some of those really important pieces. Nate, can you give us a quick elevator pitch why it's important?
Yeah, so the main topic yesterday was how threat actors are using AI as a weapon. This isn't a webinar that we wanted to put on for any type of fear, uncertainty, doubt. We just wanted to educate people going, oftentimes we hear all about AI and the uses that people are using that inside of their business. One of the items when I do security trainings that people find fascinating is that threat actors are basically running underground, ill-intended businesses as well. And there's a whole underground business landscape and market. And similar to our own businesses, they are also trying to drive efficiencies for their business. And AI is at the core of that as well. So while we're trying to use this to write better emails, make new software, threat actors are doing the same thing, right? Instead of writing good emails, they write phishing emails. Instead of writing cool new cloud software and collaboration software, they're writing malware. There's entire services that we're providing to our customers. They are creating ransomware and phishing as a service and these different ways to monetize their expertise. And so really what we were trying to do is go through and say AI at its core is not bad, right? It's the ill intent and the kind of that nefarious, action of the people behind the tools. And that just happens to be where things are landing, right? With threat actors as well. So it's AI usage in their side has reduced the cost for developing new malware, or that they're speeding up on things like how fast can I generate these phishing emails, or if there was an account compromise, how fast can I parse the data out of your Outlook to try and find where the wire transfers are going to go, right? Is using the speed of that. And then ultimately the skill has decreased because they may have had, it would have taken people to be experts on malware design. Now you can have some AI help you as well. So skill has decreased. So we went through a couple different other examples and in kind of like deepfakes and case studies and everything like that. But at the core, we were just talking about we use AI, they use AI, and how do you protect yourselves? Which the protections aren't anything new, right? It was be aware, be vigilant, ask for a second opinion, have your processes and policies in place of protecting financial stuff. So really nice webinar to we do. Like I said, we just went through a whole bunch of different case studies and everything like that. But that was ultimately the high level of an hour condensed down to 2 minutes there.
Yeah, it's hard to condense down all the things we talked about. I do want to highlight a couple of the audience questions that came in. We did have a lot about deepfakes, and we have a lot of content, so I'll make sure to include that in the resources. But is that really the thing we should focus on training people about?
While deepfakes are really interesting, and I feel like that's one of those ones that really sometimes makes the hair stand up on the back of someone's neck, right? Is it's not ultimately where I would put my time and effort.
Okay.
And yes, it's still important to educate people on that. But ultimately, why do people fall for deepfakes in the first place? Right. And because it's really no different than like if I asked you to go buy gift cards, right? You'd probably say not happening, right? But what, right, is there, it could either be me personally or the video of me saying it, right?
Mhm.
There's still some type of check and validation that you need to do. While the tech it maybe exists there, you need to look at why do we even fall for this stuff, right? Is there's circumstantial timing, right? Is, oh, I just happen to be talking to us about gift cards or just be talking about that deal that we were going to do. And it had required additional funding, right? So it aligned up well with the events that we were just talking about. That's a key factor of why people tend to fail. The other one, and probably the biggest thing that you would always want to check for, is, did it require some type of emotional response from me to drive action? The best way to ever detect a scam is to take a look at your emotional reaction to that email, call, whatever it may be. Did it make me feel scared? Did it make a sense of urgency? Did it make me feel worried, right? Maybe it's you're going to lose your data, right? Oftentimes they don't try and make you feel good along the
Mhm.
way, right? Is they want to basically get to the core of, I'm not a psychologist, but in your brain, right? Is you have the core part of your brain that's all about emotions and kind of that autonomous response, essentially, right? And that's ultimately where you're trying to get to. You're trying to get past that frontal lobe and all the logic there. And so if they can tap that inner part of your brain, you're going to drive without putting logic in place there. Again, emotional response, circumstantial timing, and then also sometimes it's a numbers game, right? Did I get the right person to do that, right? Maybe you're out in the middle of the country, there's no close gift cards by you. You're like, I'm not doing that. That's an hour away from me, right? But like I've got a Walgreens next to me, and right on their gift card, they have a big sign in the middle of all the gift cards that say, if someone requested you to buy gift cards, you are likely in a scam right now. So a really cool thing that they put up, like, live in an older neighborhood. So maybe they had quite a few people falling for scams here.
What I'm hearing, because a lot of people asked, how do I get training on deepfakes? How do I get my employees up to speed? And in reality, it seems like security training at its core is very similar. It's noticing those red flags, basically, in any circumstance, whether it's a deepfake or a voicemail or an email. All of those pieces have a core to it, which is interesting. I was just going to ask maybe some quick hitting tips of what organizations can do right now. We had somebody ask about MFA, obviously, is always our big soapbox to enable MFA and get those passwordless things set up. What are some quick hitting wins for businesses today?
Yeah, so on the webinar, we had tried to identify just some action items, coming out of that. And so really where we wanted to drive people to was protect the finances, right? Usually when large wire transfers happen, it's because someone has had kind of that full autonomy to just make a large transfer without additional layers of approval or validation. And so most of the time when people have that kind of two layers of human review, things get stopped, right? They get flagged and you're able to protect that. So if you don't already have a process in place, number one, evaluate how much loss you can take, right? Because you don't want to always approve like, hey, this is the $5 wire transfer, right? That's going to slow your business down. So set whatever the threshold is that you are able to tolerate loss on. And then anything over that value, put in your two layers of approval for those large transfers. Many organizations do, but unfortunately, I still see organizations make large wire transfers out. So not clearly all of them don't. So put that in place. Phishing-resistant multi-factor. Basically, Microsoft is already pushing this, things like passkeys, but moving away from things like the SMS, the phone call, and then that's a good step, right? Try and move away from the standard weak MFA. There's one thing I just want to mention here, and it's a little bit of a tangent, is that you still need to be vigilant on the sites that you're accessing, because there's something called a kind of an evil proxy. And these are pages that look exactly like a Microsoft login page, and it'll redirect you there. And you'll go through a legitimate Microsoft login page. They just happen to steal kind of that session token and then redirect you back to Microsoft. So while you're passing through their malicious website, everything's legitimate for the authentication. Microsoft is sending you your push notification. and then you send off that session token, they log in. But again, the threat actor, they scrape that token themselves for use, and then they go log in with that. They don't need new multi-factor because it's a valid thing. So even though you had phishing resistant multi-factor, always take a look at the site you're actually logging in on. It needs to be portal.office.com, admin.microsoft.com, whatever it may be. If you see anything other than that, and that Microsoft login page, or if you're on Okta, your Okta login page, anything other than that, stop, right? Even though you had phishing resistance, you may still be going through one of those evil proxies. So that we talked about, AI is here. You're not going to be able to fully ban it. And we talked about how about a year ago, there's many organizations saying, nope, we're not doing AI, right? We're going to block it. And then what that just stems to is shadow AI usage, right? People are just going to buy their own ChatGPT and start using your corporate data anyways, right? And so rather than just saying it flat out, ban it, or like pulling the sheet over your head and saying it doesn't exist, right, is guide people to whatever the proper usage is. If you say, I only have the tolerance to say, we can only use Microsoft Copilot, or we can only use Claude, or we can only use OpenAI, right, is at least put those guardrails in place so you can funnel people. And then you can kind of start controlling that and define what is appropriate use of the AI, right? We're not going to put healthcare info in here. We're not going to put credit card info in there, right? We need to keep this to make it your thought partner, make it for generating content, but not part of a deep pipeline with sensitive data, right? We did talk about adding deepfakes to training. Again, I don't think it's wrong. I just want to make sure that people focus on the fundamentals first, because the likelihood of a phishing email is still far outweighs the likelihood that you will receive a deepfake. So it's all just about how much you can manage there. And then also, we just talked about incident response plan, right? Is if you don't already have an incident response plan, CIT, we already do this for our managed customers. But if you are just kind of tuning into this, you can reach out to us. We'll help build something like that out. But also, those are basically just, who do I call? When do I call? What's the order? Who needs to be engaged? Because oftentimes when you have some type of incident, my team will come in and the first question they ask is, do you have cybersecurity insurance? Because they'll have to be engaged likely for one of those. And you'd be surprised at how many times we hear, I don't know. And so then they have to start calling whoever their business leaders and executives to figure out, do we have cybersecurity insurance, right? And then if so, who's it through? What's the contact info, right? And so now you're spending 2-3 hours at the start of an incident, which are the most critical times, trying to figure out how to start your incident response. And that's why that plan is so important, because it should list all that contact info and the proper steps to start the engagement.
Yeah, for sure. I'm encouraging people to go check out that webinar because it was really comprehensive. But as we close out, I want to give you an opportunity to share anything else. And then also, if we did this webinar again in a year, what do you think some changes might be?
I like that you said it was comprehensive, which means that I talked a lot.
That's a nice way of saying, but it was great. I learned a lot, and I have been on many of these podcasts and still found great information. So I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I think so. In a year, I think one of the interesting things that we'll have to see how it plays out is last year, we really saw kind of the rise of AI and people going, how is this even going to fit into products or anything? It was all theoretical. And we are seeing fundamental changes in tooling to say, no, the AI is here and it's a core component of things. And we're seeing them actually operationalize as well and become that standard process rather than just purely, let's just jam AI into everything and figure out what sticks. And so I think in the next year, we'll have at least a couple of years of time behind us. And I think we'll really see everything start to really mature. And I think when it comes to cybersecurity I was just talking to one of my team members here today. We're enabling some additional kind of email filtering AI tools on the back end to identify malicious stuff coming through CIT's environment. I've already seen glimpses of this with your HR hiring practices, right? Is while you're on an interview, I know that there's already software out there that is analyzing behavior of the individuals on the other call, trying to identify things like deepfakes. And so many organizations probably don't need software like that. Consider if you are something like a DoD manufacturer, a bank that's maybe like a larger national bank, something like that, is when you're in those highly regulated spaces, or you have things like intellectual property, things like espionage is a real risk. And we mentioned that on the webinar and had proof of that from a prior engagement that I was a part of. And so in the following year, when on the webinar, we talked about, well, does AI just come in and we have to accept our fate that threat actors are going to use it? And then we were talking about how a lot of these defense tools are also doing the same and putting AI. And I think we'll see a lot more of those defense tools hit the SMB market. Right now, they've all been heavily tailored towards the large enterprises while they tried to figure out how to sell that, and large enterprise has money. But as it scales out and gets further refined, I think we'll see more and more tools available for smaller business.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Nate, for joining us. I highly recommend checking out the full webinar, but this is just your little teaser. But again, thanks so much for joining us.